Live streamed, got it. And let's make sure. At least when you get a chance, turn over the, there we go. Gotcha. Thank you. All right, everybody, 6:30 on the clock. Welcome to the March 1st, 2022 meeting of the Rockland Zoning Board of Appeals. Let's see, all members are participating remotely. That would be myself, Mr. Baker Jr., Mr. Baker Sr., Mr. Tanzi, Mr. Haynes, and Mr. Galley. General public should be aware that this meeting is being recorded and live streamed. And finally, just want to go over the rules for the meeting. I see most everybody has their correct name in the name box for Zoom. If you don't, you will be bounced from the meeting. Anybody that doesn't have their full name in there, you don't have to have your video on, but if you don't have your full name, you will be bounced. Other than that, let's see. I would entertain a motion to open the public hearing.
Motion to open.
I got a motion. I need a second.
Second.
I got a second. Roll call. Myself is a yes. Mr. Baker Jr.
I don't know if it matters. I'm a non-voting member on this matter.
Yeah, you're a board member at this point.
Okay. Yes.
Mr. Baker Sr.
Yes.
Mr. Tanzi.
Yes.
Mr. Haynes.
Yes.
All right. Meeting's open. Let's remind everybody who is voting on this. I know myself, Mr. Tanzi, Mr. Baker Sr., and Mr. Haynes. I think that's what it was. Everybody's shaking yes? Okay. Yeah, it was a four-member board at the time. So we got that. Okay, let me read the legal ad. 6:30 p.m. remotely conducted continuance public hearing on the petition filed under Chapter 40B comprehensive permit by Shinglemill LLC, care of Conoco, for 41st Street, Bridgewater, Mass. 02324, to allow the construction of 236 units of residential housing. The project within two five-story buildings on approximately 29.33 acres of land located at 0 Pond Street and 152 Wilson Street. The site. The applicant is proposing 25% of the units to be classified as affordable as per MGL Chapter 40B. The site is located on 0 Pond Street, Lot 13, Map 9, and 152 Wilson Street, Lot 68, Map 10. A copy of this application, materials, plans, and other documents are available upon request electronically from the town clerk by dialing 718-711-1874, press 1 for the town hall, then option 6 for the town clerk's office. Email, we all know what it is. Here we go. All right. So we got a whole new package worth of documentation. Mr. Lincoln, where are you?
Right here.
There you are. All right, let's talk. What do you got to say today?
Okay, good evening, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for hearing us again tonight, all of the board. I'll probably just do a quick overview because I know it was a bunch of information we put in. I know we went over some of the information last time, the major changes, but I know we don't have any comments back yet from anyone, which I really didn't expect this quick. So we'll probably have to continue, at least the environmental discussion. I think my LSP, or the lead LSP for Conoco, is on tonight, but there's really not a whole lot to talk about, until he sees some comments there. And I know Pat has probably got a lot of stuff to go through on the civil review. So we haven't really changed anything. Don Nagel is on tonight, as is Walter Marione, my attorneys. Don concentrates on the environmental, so I'll let him speak a little bit on the Zone A stream issue.
Okay.
A lot more intelligent about it than I am. There are a couple of changes that I've thought about doing over the last week. That's the danger with going south to warmer weather, so I think they're positive changes to the plan. but I'll go over those fairly quickly. And beyond that, I might look for some input from the board on an area that I don't have a ton of solutions for, namely the outdoor amenity stuff. You know, I've talked to a bunch of people, and so anyways, that's, you know, maybe look for a few local thoughts on that stuff. So let me start off with the changes, you know, that I'm thinking about, which is just honestly, they're not going to change the site really much. No layout changes or anything like that. But what I'm going to do is zip the 5th floor on the L building. And instead, so no units on the 5th floor on the L building.
Okay.
But, and the more I got, so I started with that, and then I got thinking about, so a huge amenity these days, and not a lot of people are doing it for a couple of different reasons. It tends to get a little expensive. Sometimes it's, there's structural issues, but it's the roof deck, along with a roof gym, which is a much lower footprint on the 5th floor. You know, I think BKA did a good job with a lot, the green roof and so forth, and we can do the same thing. And this is obviously a much smaller footprint on that big building. You know, it's relatively tiny compared to a whole 5th floor units. But what it allows me to do as well is to blow up the function building over there, which I've never been a huge fan of, you know, disconnected buildings like that. I'm sure it would get used, you know, birthday parties and anniversaries and, you know, football games and stuff like that, but not like it would if it was a connected space. So a couple of weeks ago, I called the architect. I mean, they'll need some time to just redesign conceptually, you know, that L building. So the only one that's left with a 5th floor is the bar building, you know, the architects keep calling it. So it does drop the unit count to 199. And I'm not changing the parking, right? So just the amenities building, you know, the function building goes. So, I mean, to me, I think that's a big change. I know the sidewalk, you know, down at the entrance, you know, up to Home Depot. I know that's been a suggestion, you know, over the past 12 months or even longer. I'm not 100% sure I can make that happen, but you know, Damien and Conoco have talked about it. I think we can stay within the Pond Street right away. You know, that's a big one. You know, if you can't, then you're looking at a deal with Home Depot, which is probably highly unlikely. You know, one never knows, but you know, a big company like that is kind of tough. But I think with a retaining wall, which would be required because the grades drop off there off of Pond Street, we might be able to get it done. I'm just not 100% sure on the width of the sidewalk, you know, after we're done. But we, you know, we should have a maybe a concept and a lot more detail, you know, for the next meeting. You know, take a little bit of time to go through that. But the good thing is we have all of our topo, you know, our survey. You know, we've done an awful lot of shots out there, you know, over the last year or so. Conoco has. So those are the big ones. Beyond that, you know, if you don't mind, I'd like to bring in Don Nagel to, unless you have some quick questions on that stuff.
No, if Mr. Nagel's gonna try to address the Zone A issues, or get us up to date or up to speed or whatever it takes.
Okay, so you can take it away, Don.
Okay, thanks, Rick. Good evening, everyone. I'm Attorney Donald Nagel out of Situate. I've been working with Rick on this project, and in particular, issues that have arisen with regard to our NOI with the Conservation Commission. And a big issue that I know the ZBA is aware of, I think I may have addressed this briefly at our last meeting, as I recall, but the Concom has raised the Zone A issue. And, we're prepared to address that. And just to, the highlights of it are the Conservation Commission has identified a Zone A within the footprint of the project from the Mass GIS. And I think the big takeaway here is that the Mass GIS is for informational purposes only, and it says it right on the website, and that it's not to be used for actual on the ground delineation. So we have retained our own hydrogeologist, hydromorphologist, I think is formal title. And he has looked at this and determined that there is no Zone A within the footprint of this project. And we have raised that with the Concom. We're meeting with them next week, so I'm sure we'll address it with them next week. And it is, to get into the weeds a little bit on this, it's the Zone A is not a resource area under the Wetlands Protection Act. And I understand why the Concom might raise it, because it's kind of like, well, is this project doable or not? And so what I have advised is that, this needs to be brought up with DEP, and it's really, going from a conceptual or informational or, a starting point based on, just general information that they put up on the website to, well, here's the site, here's the nitty gritty technical information to determine the existence of the Zone A based on the definitions under the regulations. And, we're going to take that up with DEP. And, I'm confident it's going to get resolved on the side of our expert opinion. And with regard to how that affects this proceeding, I could say that we don't expect, it's going to take some time to get that resolved, to be blunt. But we don't expect this board, to close its hearing on this until it gets resolved, because I recognize that this board sees that as an important issue. So it's going to get resolved, not on the local level, but on the state level. And we're not pushing to get a vote on this until that Zone A issue is resolved to our satisfaction.
That sounds good. Can I bring up one thing? Did you guys have a meeting with the sewer commissioners?
This is Rick.
Yep.
Not since that last one, quite a long time ago.
Okay. All right, because what I got, let's see, I got an email from the sewer commissioners. Oh, there we go. All right. So it wasn't a recent meeting. This was September 24th, 2020. Does that ring any?
Yeah, that's probably the last one. Yep.
All right. Voted to send 6 conditions that would be attached to any permit for new connection to the Rockland sewer system that may be granted by the Rockland Board of Sewer Commissioners. Sounds familiar? Yes.
Yeah, I could be wrong, but I thought that was the letter that was already introduced. I think
this is
into the record.
it's possible, but this is what I'm getting from them. The Rockland Board of Sewer Commissioners at that time neglected to point out that in the town of Rockland, Mass, sewer ordinance February 2011, under section 2, general sewer use requirements, section 2.4D, applications, permits, and approvals, item D4E, page 17, which clearly states the following. Sewer connections in zone 1 of a public water supply well or a zone A of a public surface water supply is prohibited, except to eliminate an existing pollution program. So what are we doing about that?
Well, that's why we gotta clarify where the zone A is.
Okay, so you're aware of this?
Yes,
Okay, so right off the bat, as it stands right now, you have no sewer. What's going on with water? Have we talked to water department again? And are we still trying to get water from the water department?
No, well, I would always like to have water from the water department, but we did have, I can't remember what we talked about last meeting. I thought I had introduced, where they had voted to approve the fire sprinkler connection. Yeah, I'm pretty sure we talked about that last, Aaron.
All right,
And then
so
the water is just, off the radar right now, which is why I will, unless I hear otherwise, continue with my pump test, which is next. But we can't do the pump test until June 1st. Because Conservation Commission didn't want anybody traipsing around, as I understand it, until June 1st.
just out of curiosity, why didn't you bring that up to us? As a direct component of your project, these wells that you're putting in,
Yep.
that would be subject to our approval. You only went to conservation. Conservation never told us about it. So
No, I didn't even go. Honestly, I didn't even go to conservation. I mean, it was during the due diligence phase and we went to DEP. It's almost kind of, and that's all I did.
All right,
And
so
then
conservation had no idea on this.
No, not originally. That came up as we progressed through this whole thing. And then the pump, now that after due diligence, once we knew we had successful wells, phase 2 is a pump test. Now you get involved with locals because you're still in due diligence technically, but everyone needs to be aware.
All right. Is what it is.
To be honest, sorry to interrupt, Rob, but I've never done municipal well supply before, to be honest, so I am a newbie with that. So I just relied on consultants and DEP and we did our thing.
Okay. All right. So it's still and again, it really still comes down to the zone A, and basically it sounds like if that's going to be changed, then both zoning and conservation are both going to be looking for some sort of document from DEP that says this is the zone A. And I see Mr. Nagel shaking his head. I think he agrees with me. Both boards are going to need something that delineates where that zone A actually is. If it is to change from what's on MassGIS, because again, I go back to a couple of emails that the board has, and it says that both emails are basically saying that as it stands right now, the zone A boundaries as shown on MassGIS stand. So until we've already said this, I think you've already said this, Mr. Nagel has already said this, both boards need something in writing and a plan of some sort that shows where these boundaries are in relation to the property lines. We opened a sit-down meeting. Have you opened a sit-down meeting with DEP? I'm assuming yes.
well, procedurally, I think we need to go through the Concom first. And then go to DEP.
But if Concom's not gonna if Concom's not gonna go, is not gonna budge until they see a changed line. You know, I guess I don't know how this is gonna get solved. 'Cause it sounds
Well-
like, from what I understand, Concom is not going to budge until they hear, until there's either a yay or a nay when it comes to the location of the zoning. So,
Yep, we got to get them unbudged one way or the other. And it's going to be procedurally complicated, to be
oh
honest.
yeah,
But we're going to do it. You know,
and that's completely understood. But to seriously waste this board's and conservation's time, coming here every 30 days on a Tuesday, no, nothing yet. Nope, nothing yet. Nope, nothing yet. And how long is this gonna take? I'm not asking for a dead time. It's a rhetorical question. I'm not asking for a dead, for an actual time, but I mean, let's be realistic here, guys.
yeah,
And
if I could, Rick, you may want to weigh in, but my thought on that, and I understand what you're saying, Rob, is that, we wanted to come before you because we have a new, we have, a redesign.
mhm,
And we wanted to give you the courtesy of kind of presenting it to you and at least describing it and, doing that. We understood the reason I'm on the call tonight is to address the Zone A issue because
mhm.
we know that's important to you. So here I am, and, I could get into more details about it, but suffice it to say that we know it's a major hangup for both boards. We are going to address it. It's going to take some time, but in the meantime, it's been a while since we've appeared before this board, and we wanted to, basically introduce the changes that Rick described in general at the beginning. And that really is, we didn't want to waste your time. With all respect to the board, we wanted to let you know what these changes were, at least conceptually. And we know you need time to, develop comments that we're going to respond to. And I'm here to address the Zone A that is going to be addressed. And, but we want to just compartmentalize it a bit, if you will, so that we can give you the benefit of knowing what changes we've made. And then we'll circle back with a resolution to the Zone A and proceed from there.
All right, well, then I'm not sure. And obviously, if again, you've submitted plans with changes. Pat has not, I've been in communication with Pat Brennan. He has not he's not looked at this project in a while. So obviously there's a brand new set of plans that have come together, reduced pavement, bunch of different changes. So yeah, he's going to want to look at that. We're going to have to review the account to find out what kind of money's in there. We may have to replenish that. The other thing that we need to talk about is the LSP that we talked about. We were looking into getting an LSP on board to review the geotechnical and environmental documents it was Time Bond and Conoco. And then there was a third one that got submitted. Again, Mr. Lincoln, I guess that third one that got submitted, that's technically not yours, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, none of them are mine, honestly, except for Conoco.
Okay.
But I think the original cleanup, when they had a little bit of petroleum, I think on an engine release or something like that. That was the one 20 years ago or whenever it was. Harbor Line, that should be public record at DEP. But again, that was way before my time.
And that was the third one that you said that you had supplied?
No, Harbor Line was the original one, which I know I supplied Conoco's.
Yep.
Tie and Bonds was not mine.
That was submitted by your
Jones Street.
Yeah, by Jones Street. So it's on public. So it is public record at this point.
I believe so. Yeah, they submitted it to you guys. Yeah.
Yeah. So I found it. It took a while, but I found it. So and
Good.
it was definitely submitted. It is definitely a public record at this point. So we reached out to a couple LSPs. I think at this point, just based on gut feeling. Deb, what was the name of that the company up in Waltham? Oh, lost you. You went mute. There you go. No, you went mute again.
Yeah, I know. I'm using a different computer. The one up in Waltham was Rue. Yeah, was Rue.
All right. We had communication with them over the phone, and they seem to me the best out of them all, and considerably they were cheaper than the rest of them. So it's I think it works in both favors. It works for both. So I guess we need to talk about funding an account for the LSP. They asked for, and again, remind me, Deb, was it 1,500? They asked for
1,500.
They asked for an initial deposit of 1,500 to review and comment, although they were asking for those additional documents. I don't know if that's going to make or break anything, because again, technically, you gave that to us as kind of an extra. I'm assuming as an olive branch, saying here's another one that you guys can look at. The two that we really need to pay attention to are the Conoco one and the previous tie-in bond one, and I think that's really what they're looking at. If that
those are two of the most recent too, so that makes sense.
So I think that, and again, we had a conversation with them over the phone, Deb and I. I like the way that they were handling things. So board members, what do you think? Again, the company name, Deb, can you remind us what the company name was?
Rue.
Is there any more to it? Rue LLC or something?
I believe it is Rue Environmental. Let me just check. Rue Associates Incorporated.
All right. So again, Rue Environmental.
Rue Associates.
Rue Associates
Rue
Incorporated.
Associates. And actually, Deb, you sent that out to everybody, didn't you?
I did this afternoon in an email.
Did everybody got a chance to look at that?
I did.
All right. Are we good? And are we good with them so far? Because again, they were the only ones that actually responded to us via phone, and we were able to. And Deb and I were actually able to talk to them. Sometimes talking to people is a little bit. It gives you a better feeling of what you're dealing with than just straight email. So.
So as long as we understand, they're looking at reports that have been received to date, but they're not. I brought this up originally because not only do I want some input on the stuff that we've received, I'm concerned moving forward as we continue to receive information that we need more services, and more importantly, there's a lot of stuff that they haven't included yet in their services, like coming up with a testing protocol for the town for soil that's being imported. And so I just want to make sure that we're all under the understanding that this is the beginning of a collaboration.
Exactly. This is not the end all be all. This is basically just to kind of confirm or deny the reports that we have right now. And if it comes down to it, then we'll definitely take it a little bit further. But at this point, it's just to review the documentation and give us their opinions. If everybody's happy with that.
Motion to allow them
Motion.
to work on behalf of the town.
Okay, got motion.
Mr. Chairman, how many solicitations were sent out to LSPs?
Three.
Who was the third company?
We had Rue, we had Vertex, and who was the other one?
Offhand, I don't know. It's at work. It's at the town hall.
I want to say they were out west. I don't think they were from around here. Yeah, I don't remember the third one, but there was a third one that got sent out, but they never got back to us. That was the problem.
The other company is in Weymouth, so there is some advantage to somebody as opposed to Woburn. I thought there was some advantage to having somebody who was located nearby.
Is Ruin Weymouth?
No,
No,
yeah, Ruin, it's Woburn, right? Is it Woburn or Waltham?
the Woburn.
All right, Woburn.
Yeah.
The other
Well,
company, Vertex.
Webb is right out of Norwell, I believe. And I've worked with them. They were a really good bunch of people. And
Mr. Tanzi, I respect that, but here's the problem. If we do this more, if we have to put out another call for LSP services and wait another month, and it's just going to keep continuing this, and it's, you know, I'm trying to keep this moving here. You know, again, we have an LSP company that is coming in at a reasonable number, and we all realize and we all respect that this is only looking at the documentation and providing professional, you know, opinion on the two documents that came in. As Mr. Haynes said, the next step, if this all starts to pan out and things start to go in that direction, then yeah, we are going to have some sort of guidance from them when it comes to how to deal with, you know, how to deal with the soil inspection and, you know, checking soils as it's coming in, coming out, whatever it is. So if you don't want to go with this, and I guess we need to know now. And we've given it a month. We did the best that we could. You can't keep bringing stuff up at the last moment. That's the problem.
well, I wasn't aware that this was going out for bid. No, nobody, you know, kept me.
Once you got the last meeting,
Yeah, but I didn't know which ones that they were going to.
but you knew that this was happening. You knew that we were going to be putting them out. If you had somebody specific that you wanted to go with, you should have said something.
Well, I did. I mentioned the name of Webb.
The only one that really got mentioned was Vertex over and over and over again. Everybody kept saying Vertex, Vertex, Vertex. And we went to Vertex, and there's no reason to just keep pushing this. Do you not want to go with this company that gave both Deb and I a good feeling? Do you not want to go with them?
No, I can't say that. I just don't know them.
Neither do
That's
I.
all.
Neither do I. I don't know them either, but by professional reputation, based on what we looked up, and based on the fact that they were the only ones that reached out to us to talk about this and give us some kind of direction as to go by without even knowing who the heck they were talking to. That said a lot to me. Vertex didn't even contact us. You know, we contacted them. They emailed us back. They said, provide us the documents. We gave them the documents. And then a week later, we got something back from them. They never even, there was no communication. You know, there was no verbal communication. That to me is kind of, I don't know, it's very sterile. It's very stale. So, you know, that's the way that I feel. You know, again, it's not my decision though. It's not my decision. Saying if it's got, this is a 4-member board voting, so we need everybody on the same page. So I've got a motion.
If you feel comfortable with them, then we'll go with them.
It's just like I said, it was the verbal communication and the talking us through, and because one of the biggest questions that we both had, I think that we all had, was what do you ask this company to do? That's where it can't. And again, they helped us right from the beginning, saying, look, just give us the documents. We'll go through, we'll give you our professional opinion on what these documents say, and if we trust them or if we don't. That's really what that's really what it's coming down to. I mean, that's really the only thing that we can do. We can't do it. We can't do what was it, phase two, phase two soil test or whatever the heck it is. We can't do that. We can't go on the property to physically do any tests. We can't do that. All they can do is just review the documents and then, as Mr. Haynes said, guide us into how to basically just watch this as, if the construction starts. That's really about it. Mr. Galley, I see your hand.
Yeah, I respectfully, I already get the feeling we're going to resolve this question about whether we're going to vote. Well, I'm not a voter on this.
No, I did.
You're going to vote on approving this LSP or whatever. But are we going to agree that can we agree that we're going to decide based on what we've got available to us for choices tonight, that we can vote, that you can vote for one of them, and then maybe discuss a procedure for the future for this type of question? Maybe in the future, make that a discussion to resolve how we go out for bid for this sort of thing?
Well, here's the problem.
Yeah.
There's only so much you can do. Right? There's only so I could literally come up with a list of every LSP within Massachusetts.
Mm-hmm.
We could send out RFPs to every single LSP in Massachusetts. It's still going to come down to who's going to get back to you the soonest, who's going to give you the best. It's just like anything else. Who's going to get back to you soonest, who's going to give you the best price, and who's got the best reputation. And hopefully all of that points to the same person. And just because you know somebody and have worked with somebody before doesn't mean anything. And I've worked with a ton of people before that I would never work with again. So it really comes down to, I kind of like the fact that they are far away. Sometimes you don't want somebody who's in the thick of things, who potentially knows all the people, all the players involved. This person is so far away from Rockland and any bias that could happen. That's why I kind of like it. Weymouth is right down the street. That's fine. It's a lot of people seem to have been pointing to them. So, and again, I don't care. All I want is a licensed site professional to be able to look at these documents and give us some comfort level as to whether they feel that they are correct and accurate and a good representation of what they think is out there. That's what we need at this point. Saying if we don't want to go with them, I have no problem with that. We'll throw it out and we'll throw it out again. It's just going to prolong this. It's just going to prolong it that much longer. So it's no skin off it's no skin off. If you want to wait and get a couple more, we get a couple more. I don't think it's necessary, but again, it's not my decision. So I have a motion on the table. Mr. Baker, you're going to rescind your motion?
You need a second on it.
Yeah, I know. You're going to rescind it because nobody's seconding.
Well, then it doesn't pass.
Okay, doesn't pass. So board members, what do you want to do?
Rob, in the last meeting, you said that what we agreed to was we were going to have, I always forget his name, our consulting engineer provide some names and assist you in sending out sending these requests out. So maybe you could explain, we've sent out 3. Did those names all come through Pat?
Vertex, he seconded Vertex. I don't know where we got the name. I don't remember where we got Rue. I'd have to go back through the emails, but I know he basically said Vertex.
So my issue, one of them, Rue is giving us a fixed price for $1,500. Vertex is time and materials, and they think it's going to take $3,500. So I'm a little concerned that,
go with Vertex
about the time, in the end, I think whichever way we go, the developer is picking up the tab. So
That's why it doesn't matter to me. That's
So
why it doesn't matter to me. So Mr. Haynes, if you want to make a motion for Vertex, make the motion.
I only wanted to discuss it before we jumped out with the motion. So
Like I said, I don't, it's no skin off my nose. We did that. We did the very best that we could. We got two proposals back. I'm going with the one that I suggest going with the one that isn't anywhere close to us. That way there's absolutely no way that there could be, well, not no way, but there's less of a chance of any kind of conflict and knowing anybody, any of the players by going with somebody that's in Massachusetts, but far away from us, versus Weymouth, which is next town over. So that was my thinking. I don't care.
yeah,
I
we
just
got
need,
that.
I need answers from a professional. That's what I know I need.
So again, when we discussed this last time, we were going to sort of defer this to Pat, and Pat seems to have indicated that his preference is Vertex. So
He's not on the meeting right now. Would you like me to get him on? I can call him right now and have him come on. I just we're going around and around and around for literally no reason. For literally no reason. If you want to go with Vertex, make a motion. I have no problem with that. Make a motion for Vertex.
I'm not sure that this is actually just entirely up to us. So again, right? Don't we have to have the developer weigh in and say it's okay? And
Mr. Lincoln, they want to spend $3,500 of your money, time, and materials.
it's an estimate.
It's an estimate.
All I can say, I don't know Rue. I think they're a big company.
They are.
Vertex, I think is a decent sized company as well. The only experience I have with Vertex is more when people buy apartments, they'll hire them for like building envelope and just kind of an all general. So I'm not that familiar with them, but to me, it's just the LSP.
Same. That's my point.
When it gets down to environmental, all these guys are professionals and ladies. So we've got 3 or 4 of them at Conoco now, and I'm just not there's not a lot of subsurface here. These reports should be relatively simple to review. I think 3,500 is probably a little steep, but it's not crazy. 1,500 is a better price.
Of course it
Maybe
is.
if Vertex were to do it for a little less, hey, great. Honestly, I don't. I'm comfortable with anybody as long as it's an LSP.
All right, Mr. Haynes, make a motion if you want to go with Vertex.
I'm honestly agnostic, except for having a discussion about it. I think that whoever it is, we're looking at a longer, bigger engagement than just reviewing these reports. And so I want to make sure I want to make sure we pick somebody we can work with in the long term, not just get not just have these reports reviewed. I'm frankly more concerned about the things we're not talking about in this proposal. I'm concerned about getting some assistance with our conservation issues and hydrology and flooding and the imported soils and the testing on the site and reviewing the test pit locations. And none of that stuff, literally, this is we're barely scratched the surface in what this particular company is going to do.
Right, but here's the thing. Mr. Brennan can take care of a lot of what you're talking about. As a civil engineer, he can take care of a lot of it. When it comes to the geotech, he can.
In our previous discussions, he has made it very clear he's not, he is not a person who does any of those other things. He's not our conservation go-to. He's not an LSP. He's not able to.
He is our conservation go-to. What are you talking about?
he said that those issues are not in his wheelhouse.
In the conservation is,
Is,
as a civil engineer.
He's told us in past meetings, he's not our professional in that regard.
Chairman?
Yes, sir.
So a couple of just quick things. I know Concom also uses a peer review, which I've paid for separately, which is a larger firm. That's the minor point. The other point I had was, on the soil import, you're probably, that could be another firm that's local, because honestly, somebody's going to use a tech, either plant on site and or plant at the sand and gravel plant, and take random samples and send them to a lab and everything else. It may not even be who you hire for an LSP. So just a comment.
Yes, thank you. I was going to bring it up. If the board wants to move forward with Rue, let's at least hold open the possibility that we do peer review with somebody else for conservation, or get peer review for soils with somebody else. But maybe this isn't going to be the long-term relationship, but just something to get us going at this point. So
it's at this point, all we really need is an LSP to review those documents. That's what satisfies it from there. When it comes to post, or when it comes to pre or during construction issues, different story. When it comes to the wetland issues or conservation issues, again, different story. And it's already been decided. This was decided a long time ago, that between Mr. Brennan, Mr. Tanzi, and myself, who have a lot of wetland permitting experience, we could handle the local. That was decided at this point years ago. So I have no issue with who we go with. I would like to decide on one of the two. If again, Mr. Haynes, if you want to make a motion for Vertex, please do. And I'll be honest, I'm gonna agree to. I'm gonna vote for it. I just need I need a licensed professional to review these documents, put their license on the line to review these documents.
Rob, I've made my comments, so
Okay.
I'm leaving it there.
So, Mr. Baker, you want to? Is your motion still on the table?
Yes, no, I'll put it back on.
All right, motion's on the table to go with Rue. Do we want to have a second?
I'll second it so we can vote.
Yeah, we got a second. We're going to do all in favor, hopefully all in favor. Mr. Baker, Senior?
Yes,
Yes, myself is a yes. Mr. Tanzi?
Yes.
And Mr. Haynes?
Yes.
And in the end, the motion carries, so we're gonna go with Rue. Mr. Lincoln, there you are. Can you cut a check for the 1,500 and get it to the town hall as soon as you can?
Sure. I can do it tomorrow morning.
All right, that works. And in the end, when it comes down to the physical being on site, the physical working with the town, honestly, you probably will go with Vertex. They're local. All right. When it comes to the people that are going to be doing the job on the site, that's a different story. If all they're doing is reviewing the documentation, any licensed site professional can do that and give us their opinion. So that's the way that I look at it. And Jim Hansen, no, I don't decide without anyone else. Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate that. One more comment like that and I'm going to bounce it. So next, we've dealt with the Zone A. We still don't know what's going on there. We've got, what else do we got? The licensed site professional, they're going to review the documentation. And
Pat's review.
Deb, you're gonna have to look into the account to make sure we've got money in there for him. And if we don't, then I'll get him did you supply us yeah, you supplied us digitals of all the updated that you have, right, Mr. Lincoln?
Yes, sir.
Okay. We'll forward that to Pat, have Pat look at that. We'll review what's in the account. If there's additional needed, then we'll get in touch with you. And then hopefully for the next meeting, hopefully for the next meeting, the LSP will have done their review, Pat will have done his review. Are we waiting on anything else? Anybody?
The Zone A issue.
And that's gonna take forever. And unfortunately, I hear you, but that's gonna take absolutely forever. So that's gonna be just another continuance. I know that. Is there anything else with Mr. Baker Jr.?
Just to Mr. Baker's point, until that Zone A issue is resolved, a lot of the other things that we have to address can't be addressed.
Right.
And whether it's water or sewer or any number of things.
Right. And I'll go ahead. I've said this a million times. I've said this to everybody a million times. The zoning board can approve this with conditions. We can. It's very simple. We can approve this project with conditions. That conditions list will be 3.5 miles long. All right. But the sheer fact is the first condition is always going to be you have to comply with state law. And at this point, the project doesn't work. The project doesn't fit that, but they're trying to change that zone in. So there's nothing that we can really decide until the location of that zone A is determined or modified based on what Conoco is trying to get through to DEP. So it is what it is. And if the applicant wants to continue, I'd like to hear a request for a continuance at this point.
Well, should we have the water issue, the water department issues and the sewer issue resolved too? I mean,
So, as far as I know, sewer is
sewer, if they can't get sewer, then they can't do anything.
Well, right now, again, based on, I don't know, and again, the only thing that I got from, the only thing that I got from sewer at this point was the board voted to send 6 conditions that would be attached to any permit for new connections at the other for Zero Pond Street. Mr. Lincoln, do you have any of that?
All I have is the letter that was drafted. I don't know if it was Attorney Galvin, but I have that letter. I thought it came from the sewer department or Attorney Galvin or the ZBA. That's all I have.
All right, so that's what I'd be looking for. And I think that Mr. Baker, to what you're saying, I think this is what we're looking for. The board voted and 6 conditions that may be granted. Other than that, I don't know of an absolute approval or disapproval.
Okay, I'll grab a copy of that letter from the sewer department, or if someone wants to email it to me, that would be great.
Yeah, it's a matter of if it's here or if it's not here.
Okay.
I'm going to try and look for it on the website, but I guarantee it's going to take forever. So, and again, the only and I read it earlier this morning or in the meeting. It just says that any sewer connection is prohibited in the Zone A. And right now, the Zone A goes right through the intersection of Pond and the main thoroughfare coming into the site. So until that gets solved, you can't even get sewer that way. So, but like I said, and it's at this point where our hands are tied right now. I don't think we really can make a decision.
Rob, could I ask Mr. Lincoln a question?
Please go ahead.
Or Jenny? Realistically, how long do you think it's going to take you with DEP and SOAR and conservation to get any kind of answers? 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, a year?
Let me throw Don under the bus, because honestly, I don't know. I'm sure there are a couple of different answers depending on how things go with procedurally. So, Don, do you want to comment on that? Don, you're on mute.
Yeah, I mean, not to sound flip, but it depends. We may, we're gonna go back to the Concom. They may want to, depending on how they want to handle this, they may just issue a denial based on the Zone A, which I would object to, because Zone A is not a resource area under the Wetlands Act, and we'd have to appeal it to DEP. And the other route is to, and that's a procedural appeal route. There's other ways to do it as well, and to engage with DEP on a more informal basis, but that may be less efficient, quite frankly. So,
Mr. Nagel, can I say, I don't mean to interrupt, but can I ask you a quick question? You seem to be inferring that the Zone A is not within the Conservation Commission's purview? Am I hearing that correctly?
The Zone A is not a resource area under the Wetlands Protection Act, and therefore it's not within the jurisdiction of the Concom to approve or deny a project based on the presence or lack thereof of Zone
A. Okay. Can I ask you a question then?
Mhm.
Whose purview is it within?
DEP. So it's a little bit, like, chicken before the egg. So it's, and we got to resolve it. We got to move on with this. We got to present you with a project that does comply with state law. I agree with what you said earlier. And so we intend to do that.
Okay.
As expediently as possible. But I think we all recognize it could take some time, either through an appeal process or through an informal process of engaging with DEP and convince them with our experts that the Zone A is somewhere else rather than within the project footprint.
Okay. So DEP, basically, they're the only ones that can approve or disapprove of actions and construction and different activities within a Zone A. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, they're under their resource protection division, they have jurisdiction over Zone A's. Okay. And they can prohibit certain activities within Zone A's. Not, frankly, the Conservation Commission. So when the Conservation Commission raises this issue, we, prior to my direct involvement, there has been discussions with DEP, but they've been unresolved. So what we need to do is resolve them and avoid get this problem out of everybody's hair. I think that's imminent, that the procedure for doing that and engaging with DEP is going to be imminent. And it's either going to be through a regulatory appeal process from the Concom or through informal discussions with DEP. But as you might imagine, getting DEP's focused attention on this and getting a determination that we can go to the bank figuratively with or go to back to the ZBA with is a challenge in and of itself.
That's understood, but one last question. Wouldn't if this were let's pull this completely out. All right. Let's say there was no wetlands in the area. Let's say the only thing that we had to look at was that Zone A. All right, let's say that's the only thing that we had to look at.
Mhm.
If that was the question and there was no wetlands involved whatsoever, you wouldn't have to go to the Concom, correct?
Right.
Okay. Let's say there was no floodplain. Let's say there was none of that. The only issue was the zone A. Wouldn't planning board have anything to say about that?
Well, I mean, you're the governing body with this comprehensive permit application.
That's where I'm
So,
going with this. We are the planning board. So, yeah. No. That's really what it comes down to. If the state says you can't do it, then the planning board would say that you can't do it. We're the planning board. So right now, yeah, and yes, the answer is no until we get something that says the DEP is changing the location of it. Which again, we've already said this. You know this. I'm not trying to.
And Mr. Chairman, you identified this earlier as well, that an alternative is to condition the comprehensive permit on compliance with this specific provision of state law.
I've got a bunch of hands raising here. Mr. Tanzi, I saw yours first.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'm reading the WPA Form 5 Order of Conditions, DEP file number 2730414.
Mr. Nagel, do you know what he's referring to?
This is the Order of Conditions
Standard form, yeah.
issued by the Conservation Commission on this site. I believe it's for drilling wells, for drilling the wells, all right? But on section B, on this is the permit, okay? That was issued by the Conservation Commission under findings. It says findings pursuant to the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act. Following the review of the above referenced notice of intent and based on the information provided in this application and presented at the public hearing, the commission finds that the areas in which work is proposed is significant to the following interests of the Wetlands Protection Act. It says check all that apply. A, the first one, public water supply. D, private water supply, groundwater supply, storm damage prevention, fisheries, protection of wildlife habitat, flood control.
Oh, it was so perfect. And then he, oh, everyone loved it.
So this zone A is public water supply. It's also private water supply, depending upon what you're dealing with. But typically, with the zone A, it's public water supply. The private water supply comes into the fact with the zone 1 related to the wells. That's a whole nother topic. But the DEP has incorporated into the Wetlands Protection Act the stormwater policy. And the stormwater policy includes, it talks specifically about all kinds of zone A's, zone 2's, water supplies, rare habitat. I mean, it goes on and on. So this zone A is within the jurisdiction of the commission. I mean, to say that this is an unregulated area, a zone A to a reservoir, that's just ridiculous.
Yeah, I'm not, if I may respond. Yeah, I'm not saying that the zone A is unregulated, but it's not regulated by the local conservation commission. And the reason is that those things that you're talking about are interests identified by the act. And those interests are served by protecting wetland resource areas, like bordering vegetated wetlands or coastal dunes or intermittent streams or perennial streams. Those are resource areas that are protected under the Wetlands Act, and the interests that the act protects are those interests that you just named. Those aren't resource areas subject to jurisdiction under the act. Those are interests identified under the act, which should be protected when work is being done within resource areas. The resource areas that we're talking about here is a bordering vegetative wetlands. And the zone A is not a bordering vegetative wetland, but the zone A is regulated, absolutely is regulated, but it's regulated by the state, not the Concom.
Public water supply is one of the listed
Interests in the act.
interests in the act.
Right.
All right. The Conservation Commission's jurisdiction is the Wetlands Protection Act. And it also takes their jurisdiction is also the local bylaw. It's also the state regulations 310 CMR 10. Those are all jurisdictional of the local Conservation Commission. A notice of intent gets filed with both the local Conservation Commission and the state DEP. The state DEP reviews the application, makes sure it's complete, adds comments, and issues a file number. From there, it's put into the hands of the local Concom. They'll either approve with conditions, or deny it. So these interests of the act and water supply, public water supply, is definitely one of the protected interests of the act. The Concom has jurisdiction over that interest of the act. And it's also protected under the stormwater management policy, which was incorporated into the Wetlands Protection Act, or into the wetlands, I should say, the regulations 310 CMR 10. And that took place, I'm going to say, about 10 years ago. So that stormwater policy prohibits any activity in these zone A's and in the zone ones, especially with stormwater management systems. They're prohibitive. It's right out of the stormwater handbook. Back in, I believe it was October, mid-October, we had a meeting, and I stated that to you. You were present, Mr. Nagel, and I made that statement clear. And back then, you said exactly what you're saying now. And we haven't budged anything on this. This is under the jurisdiction of the local Concom. To say that a local conservation commission has no jurisdiction over their public water supply, that's just not true. It can be seen quite clearly in the stormwater management policy, which was incorporated in 310 CMR 10.
Yeah, we have no interest in building a project within a zone A. The Mass GIS map, according to our experts, is not accurate. DEP says it's not to be used for delineation. We hired an expert to identify any zone A within the footprint of the project. And he has told us in writing, and we convey this to the Conservation Commission, that based on his analysis, there's no zone A in the project site. Now, that is not consistent with the Mass GIS, but the Mass GIS is, and I don't, forgive me for repeating myself, but the Mass GIS is not for delineation purposes. It's for informational purposes. It's basically saying, okay, there might be a zone A around here, check it out. That's basically what it says. And we did check it out. And we determined that there's no zone A. And the ZBA does not want to issue a comprehensive permit approving this project that's within Zone A that's identified on DEP's Mass GIS, even though that GIS is not for delineation purposes. So as I explained to the chairman, what we need to do is to engage with DEP and give them the technical information that would support the redelineation of the Zone A. Once they do that, and we have something that we can bring to you that's verifiable, we'll come back to you and say, look, here it is. The Zone A isn't an issue anymore, if we can do that. So I don't want to debate about, what the Clean Water Act, what the Wetlands Protection Act covers or doesn't cover. We're talking about a Zone A, which has nothing to do with the Wetlands Protection Act.
I've read letters where, whether it was somebody from Andronico or Ty and Bond, or I'm not sure who, but they approached the DEP and they made that argument that there's no Zone A, or the Zone A isn't where it was. They even contacted the water superintendent, Mr. Lapointe, and they asked him various questions out of its context. They asked him if the reservoir was spring fed, and he told them that it is, which it is, but it's also surface water fed as well. And they took that information out of its context. They went to the DEP and they said, well, the superintendent said that it's spring fed, and if it's spring fed, there's no Zone A. Well, the superintendent was very upset because that information was taken entirely out of its intended context, and it was not complete information that was presented to the DEP. The DEP looked into it, and the DEP shot that argument down and stated quite emphatically that the delineation of that Zone A is where it is, and it's going to stay that way. Now, I don't know what you intend on doing to come up with another argument to change their minds, but you got to come up with a preponderance of evidence. Saying our expert, who you paid to be your expert, says that it doesn't exist or doesn't exist on the site. We've been going on for 2 years now, probably more than 2 years. And quite frankly, the contamination issue and the Zone A issue should have been the very first things that were looked into and addressed and rectified, with all kinds of approval from both state and local jurisdictional authorities before you proceeded with, preparing site plans. Now, here we are at the 11th hour, and, we haven't even hired an LSP to represent us. We've been going back and forth about the Zone A. I've been reading this information about these wells. It looks like to me, I've got data here provided by Conoco that says that these wells were drilled in like April 1st of 2019 and were tested on April 4th of 2019. And I've got an order of conditions to drill a well it was issued this year, or last year, 2021, May 11th, 2021, public hearing closed. They didn't put an issuance date on it, and then there's a permit from the DEP that's to drill the wells, and they wanted to witness the well drilling, and they wanted monitoring of all of butters drinking water wells and 48-hour pump tests and the DEP wanted at least a 10 days advance notice of the pumping test to allow for department inspection. Well, this is dated October 30th, 2019. And I've got data, information here saying that the wells were drilled in April of 2019. So how could this was permitted after the wells were drilled, which would mean, leads me to believe that the department didn't get notified in advance, for a department inspection. That's condition number one. So I don't know what's going on here, but you also have a zone 1 that you have to deal with these wells. And I just don't get the timing of these permits versus the documentation saying when these things were, the wells were drilled and pumped and tested. It's not making any sense. It looks like these wells were drilled and then permitted afterwards.
Mr. Lincoln, can you speak to that?
Well, I already sent a letter, the original DEP approval. So I had hired a consulting firm, not Conoco, way before Jones Street, and they permitted and designed the wells. I think what Mr. Tansey is reading is we've never done the pump test. So once we drilled the wells, which we had DEP approval for, a lot of what he was reading was including monitoring, like local water wells and things like that. That's for when we do the pump test, which we don't have planned we can't do until after June 1st. Once I drilled the wells, we just put it on hold because we didn't know what was going on with the water department. And it's been sitting there ever since, but it was fully approved. But there are very strict protocols, both Conservation Commission, which is what they had issued the order of conditions for. It wasn't the wells. It was after they were drilled, and it's for the pump tests. The well drilling itself was not done under local jurisdiction. So we fully intend to comply with all of the local order of conditions and DEP's protocol, and they will witness it. But again, that's after June 1st.
Understood, but I'm going back to what Mr. Tansey is saying about the inconsistent time periods. Is that?
No, I think what he was reading was both the local Concom and DEP's protocol for the pump tests after the wells were drilled. And I remember, I think we talked about this last time, and I emailed over to everyone, or the board, I should say, that original communication from my PE at On-Site Engineering that handled all of the discussions with DEP and the design. They had to spot the wells and draw radii around the wells and everything else before DEP would give approval. So all that was done, not by me, but by On-Site.
Well, I got my information from a report done by Conoco. And Conoco, it was stamped by Susan Honeywell. And in it, it says two installed new bedrock wells were constructed on April 1st through the 11th, 2019 by Skillings and Son. And it goes on and it describes the depth and the lat and longs on the locations. And then it says preliminary pumping on April 2nd, 2019. Skillings furnished and installed a well pump in well number 1, which was set at 600 feet. Well number 1 was pumped approximately 30 minutes at a rate of 15 GPM. Preliminary water quality samples were collected on April 4th, 2019 at 10 a.m. and delivered to Contest Laboratory Analytical Laboratory in East Meadow, Massachusetts. It's a state certified lab for analysis. So it was analyzed. So there's analysis were done on well number 1 back in April 2nd, 2019. And that was well before the state issued a permit. It's a pump test approval. And on October 30th, 2019, it's transmittal number X283798. And it says, please find the attached letter of approval for the request for a site exam pump test proposal. But on site here is saying that they installed the pump and they pumped for approximately 30 minutes at a rate of 15 GPM, and preliminary water quality samples were collected on April 4th. So, and then there's data presented by Conoco on April 4th, 2019, and it's analyzing VOCs, metals, dissolved metals.
Mr. Tank, can I speak?
Yes.
So you've got a couple of different things going on there. There's an initial pump test, but it's not the pump test that we're all talking about with DEP and Concom. The initial pump test is just a quick, what are the wells going to produce? If they come up and they're going to produce 5 gallons a minute, the wells get plugged and you move on. So that was done right when the wells were drilled. Once you know what they're going to pump, then you go back to DEP, report the results, and you get, you design a pump drawdown test, which is far more sophisticated than what Skilling's is just the well drilling. And that's what was done after, which is standard protocol. Conoco's stuff had nothing to do with the municipal well stuff. We went over to test the wells in addition to the rest of the site, because we had some water available in the wells. So we said, let's go test the wells. Let's test for the PFAS stuff, VOCs, whatever else the LSPs came up with. That's the only reason Conoco got involved with the wells. It was as part and parcel of the environmental review on the rest of the site. But the big pump and drawdown test, again, hasn't been done yet. And that is what Concom and DEP, that's why they laid their protocol out for us.
Mr. Baker Jr., I see you raising your hand.
Thank you. Actually, Mr. Chairman, if Mr. Tanzi isn't done, I can yield until he's finished, but.
Mr. Tanzi, can we take a break for a second and talk to Mr. Baker Sr., Mr. Baker Jr.?
Yeah, you can, but I mean, I'm just going back to this report done by Onsite, and they've located wells. They've mapped out what they call a zone 1 radius. And Mr. Lincoln said that gets done afterwards, after the state witnesses their tests, but this was done well before the permits for the state and the Concom were done. So I don't know what to make of it. Dates don't make sense to me.
Well, and my recollection at the last meeting is there was a discussion of where the wells originally came from. Who is the permitting entity for those wells? And my recollection was that Mr. Lincoln said that was the DEP. So we asked Mr. Lincoln to provide the documentation from the DEP that permitted the original digging of the wells. And by the information just provided by Mr. Tanzi, those are up and running at least to do some minimal kinds of testing in April of 2019. In response to that request, it appears that what Mr. Lincoln sent us was the pump test permitting that was issued in October of 2019 for wells that had already been in existence for 6 months. And I guess we still don't have any indication, at least in terms of documentation from Mr. Lincoln, as to the permitting source for the digging of the wells.
Right.
Mr. Lincoln?
That was sent. That was early. I can send it again, but that was.
No, I think what you're referring to, or maybe it's not, because what I have here is something date stamped January 21st. And again, this is the DEP pump test permit. But you said there's something else that was forwarded with specific reference to the original digging of the wells that occurred on or before April of 2019?
Right, and it was a conversation between DEP and on-site. So we have that information.
Well, no, a conversation or an actual communication from DEP saying you can dig those wells.
Yeah, well, I'll give you what on-site has. So I don't mean to try and kick the ball around, but I hired the consultants to permit it. It's a well-known firm. All they do is water. I've used them for many years because I originally got their name from DEP. DEP trusts them. So
right, but my recollection is that what we had specifically asked you for is what you had from DEP, not through some other intermediary or someone who's been involved, or a subcontractor or a consultant or a vendor or someone else, that actually was from DEP saying, yes, you may dig those wells. Now,
if it wasn't forwarded, I can forward it, but I'm pretty sure I had forwarded the documents that were prior to the drill date. But I'd be happy to. There's email history, and on-site's got a full file, so it's easy to get.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, typically though, when DEP, let's take it out of the DEP context for a second. When any governmental entity issues a permit to do something, whether it's to dig a well, whether it's to hold a dance or whatever it might be, you get something from the governmental entity. It's not an email. It's not a voicemail. It's not a text message. It's some official document, typically called a permit, that says you may do what you want to do or what you're asking to do. Are you saying now that, as far as you know, it was much less formal than that?
I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that I think on-site received it as my agent. And I don't, I've like you, I mean, there's lots happened with me over the last 2 years. They have the file, so all I've got to do is.
Well, not quite like me, because they're not my agent, they're your agent. So yeah, I don't know that I'm speaking for anyone else, but I would certainly like the documents that I thought we had requested.
Sure, I'd be happy to.
The last meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So I'd be happy to email Susan Honeywell, who is still there.
Mr. Baker, I'm going to point to one thing that was that's on the website right now. And I thought this is what got sent in relation to that, but I could be wrong. This is an order of conditions for Shinglemill given by our Conservation Commission. It's got a DEP file number and everything. This is dated. I thought this is what got sent. This is dated the June 8th, 2021. So there was a vote with the Conservation Commission to do something.
Right, but I think the context in which this request came up at the last meeting was when Mr. Lincoln said that the town did not permit the digging of those wells, that the digging of the wells was permitted by the DEP.
Right.
So that's when I thought we had the discussion of, well, there needs to be, or there should be something from the DEP saying, go forth and dig.
And I agree with you 100%. I thought that's what this was. I'll be honest, I thought that's what this was. It came in January 21st, 22. And this was received by the town clerk, January 21st, 22, dated. Again, the signature date on this is, what the hell is it?
It's October 30th,
No,
2019.
on this order of conditions from the Conservation Commission, the signature
Oh,
date.
I don't know.
This is what I thought. This is what I thought, because again, we're talking DEP. This is a DEP form. This is what I thought it was. Apparently,
It's on the second page, number 7. There's a February 19th, 2021. That was the date the notice was filed. The public hearing was on May 11th, 2021. Is that what you're looking at? Mr.
yeah, I've
Chair?
got and under signatures, date of issuance, I have June 8th, 2021. What is that? If that's not the approval, the local approval or whatever it is, if this is not the local approval for the wells, then yeah, then I think then Mr. Baker Jr. has raised a very good point here.
Okay. If, Mr. Chairman, if I may, can I direct a couple of questions to Mr. Nagel?
Please.
I'm not sure he's there.
Nope, I think he's coming back. No, his screen is off and he's muted. Now he's unmuted.
There we
There
go.
he is.
I am.
Thank you.
Yep,
Uh,
sure.
Mr. Nagel, you had outlined when one, I think it was Mr. Rosa asked you the course or the path that this might take in the future for there to be a determination by DEP as to whether or not the proposed work is taking place in Zone A. And you had mentioned an appeal of the Conservation Commission's decision or a less formal process. But the sense, and I just want to make sure I understood you correctly. The
Yes.
sense I got is that your position is ultimately that the DEP is going to have to make the determination as to the applicability of Zone A in the project. Would that be a fair statement?
Well, I think that would be the best, most convincing evidence for this board. But legally, I don't think it is required, because what we have now, what you folks are looking at now, is the Mass GIS Zone A. And it's within the footprint of the project. So I understand why that's an issue to the board.
And that's the piece that you said essentially is for informational purposes only, so it
Yeah.
really doesn't have any substantive impact.
That's right.
Okay,
It's-
but what can you get us? Or what theoretically could you get us from DEP that says that?
We have been trying informally to get DEP to look at this. It's hard to get their attention.
Okay,
And so I think that, if the Conservation Commission is not willing to issue an order of conditions. So here's the formal part. If the Conservation Commission isn't willing to issue an order of conditions with this Zone A being changed, but under the Mass GIS, then I think we're going to have to take it to DEP through an appeal process, through an SOC.
okay.
And I think that's when we can join DEP in the issue of the Zone A, whereas informally, we're not able to get their attention, quite frankly.
Okay, so, and did I understand you correctly to say it's your position that the Conservation Commission lacks the jurisdiction to determine the applicability of Zone A?
That is correct.
Okay, So what would you have done at an earlier meeting before the Conservation Commission if they had said, it is our determination as the Town of Rockland Conservation Commission that Zone A does not apply to this project?
I would have agreed with them.
Okay. So
As far-
essentially the position you're taking is that the Conservation Commission only lacks jurisdiction if they rule contrary to what you'd like them to rule. Because you essentially just said, if they said it doesn't apply, you were just going to move forward with the project on that basis. But how can they apply, how can they assert jurisdiction that they don't, that you're claiming that they don't have?
We can get into semantics here, but I
like that. That's one of the things I do here.
Yeah. Well, I think that, I mean, you're asking some interesting questions, but I don't want to, foretell the future. I mean, it will unfold as it will in the full space of time. But I think that clearly the board is frustrated that this Zone A issue is an obstacle. And, what we could do, what we haven't done is bring our hydrogeologists in here and testify as to the presence or lack thereof of a Zone A and the footprint of the project and convince you of that. And I think that is, in my opinion, that is the most efficient and effective way to go, because DEP is already said that its Zone A map is only for informational purposes only, and it's up to the applicant to figure out exactly where it is. We have figured out exactly where it isn't, quite frankly. Okay. And we'd be happy to put forth our experts before this board to explain that. But we feel like that forum really is, respecting the Conservation Commission's concern about this. We think that we should address that at the Conservation Commission at the outset. And that's why earlier I said, we should really, for the purposes of this, the ZBA, we should put this issue on hold till we resolve it either with the Concom or through the DEP, through one process or the other that I previously described.
Okay. And again, that position sort of begs the question of jurisdiction of the Conservation Commission based on your kind of varied interpretations of what that jurisdiction might be. The other question I have, or not the other question, and again, keeping in mind I'm not a voting member on this matter, but were I to be one, I would be much more persuaded by an independent, neutral determination by DEP as to the applicability of Zone A than I would from one of the, for the lack of a better term, the litigants. And I know that's not the right term to apply, but you get my point. If I were a trier of fact, and one of the applicants or one of the parties before me said, this is the case. And my next question is going to be based on what objective authority? And that's, okay. So, all right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
No, not a problem. I appreciate that. All right. Where are we now? Mr. Baker Senior, are you raising your hand? Is that a finger up my nose?
I have one question. No, I have one question.
Please.
Who determined the Zone A originally? Who put that on the map?
DEP came up with the DEP. I can answer this. DEP came up with the definition. All right. DEP came up with the definition, and the location was based on, there's 3 tributaries out there. All right. Based on the National Geodetic quad sheets. All right. And the distance is 200 for the tributaries. It's 200 feet off of the center line of the brook. I think that's how they define it. And when you look at the Mass GIS, the Mass GIS mapping with the quad sheets, which shows these 3 tributaries. That's how it got on there. Mr. Dimitrick is shaking his head. All right, speak up then, sir.
The quad sheets do not show any tributaries. The tributaries are shown on the on Mass GIS's website only. The quad sheets do not indicate tributaries on the sheet.
Check yourself. I just looked at it again. It's on there. And that's how and you can see them clearly. I'm not going to tell him he's muted.
No, I am looking at the quad map right now on Mass Mapper, and there is no tributary. I can show you on my screen.
I can go to it myself.
There's a difference between the quad maps and the base map for Mass GIS.
Hold on, hold on.
Can we do a share screen?
I can. I want the chairman's.
I want the chairman's blessing.
Yes.
Right.
Go for it if you want to. I don't know if do I have to?
I think I got it. So this is the USGS topographic map that does not show any stream tributaries.
Oh, okay, yeah, no, I see what you're saying.
Right, you can see them kind of over here. Go, again, not go to the reservoir. But this is our site right here, and there are no tributaries per the USGS topographic maps.
Where are they? So on their base mapping, then where are they getting this information from?
I think that's the question at hand that we are trying to resolve with DEP is how they base those numbers, and that our hydrogeologist has gone to the site and has not been able to find said tributaries that would indicate a zone A on our site. Again, where they got those lines, it's GIS systems. It's the same way that they do their wetlands. You can bring up all of the Mass GIS wetlands, but any wetland scientist will tell you that those are far from accurate.
No, they're an indicator that there's a wetland system there.
Fair. I don't want to be too dismissive of that, but there is no. I just wanted to make sure. I'm sorry, I was shaking my head. I wasn't trying to be insultive. But
Chairman, can I say something? This is Rick. I don't know if we sent the geomorphologist report to the ZBA. I thought we did. I know we submitted to Concom, but honestly, it's really extensive, and the guy's been all over the world. I mean, it'd be an interesting read. He goes back to the 1800s and uses LIDAR, and he did field visits. So it's not going to help, but it's an interesting read if nothing else.
Mr. Lincoln, I have to keep pointing though to it was a series of emails with this guy Richard Friend. Have you seen these emails?
Richard Friend? No, I don't know him.
Richard Friend from DEP.
Nope.
Okay, maybe you need to see these. He's coming right out and we're talking about the tributaries that they went out in the field and found. So I don't know what they're talking about tributary A, tributary B, and tributary C. And they said they found them and they're not going to change it. This is Richard Friend, Mass DEP Drinking Water Program. Again, not knowing exactly who this gentleman is. Pat Brennan was at these meetings with them on site.
Well, I knew DEP was on site, but I didn't know who was there. So.
Oh, so it's let me see, Bruce Bruce Buick of Mass DEP Drinking Water Program, Boston, Richard Friend Drinking Water Program, Boston, Chris Lucas Environmental, Mike Trudeau from Conoco, Rory McDonald from Conoco, Pat Brennan from Amory Engineers, Marty Nova, Beta Group, Lorraine Pratt from the Conservation Commission, and I had Steve Olson, Abington Rockland Joint Waterworks. So 2 members of your company were at this meeting. Grega, talk to me.
All right, the quad sheet shows streams. It shows perennial streams. It also shows intermittent streams on it. A tributary isn't necessarily a perennial stream. It isn't necessarily an intermittent stream that has enough flow in it to be recorded on a quad sheet. There's a definition of what a tributary is, and I believe it's in 314 CMR 22. But it talks about a tributary being a defined water course in the ground where water moves under a head. I mean, that's a paraphrase, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to show up on a USGS quad sheet. A tributary can be a very, very shallow but defined ditch that water flows into in the ground under a head. And what these specialists that you read about, those 3 specialists from the DEP, or all those people, they found those tributaries in the ground. They were probably very shallow that you wouldn't pick up. It'd be too small to pick up on a quad sheet. And with that note, even the quad sheets can miss an intermittent stream. It might not show up, and then you have to do an analysis of whether it has a half-acre watershed or something like this. But that's a whole different thing. An intermittent stream is not a tributary as defined in 314 CMR 22. So that's what that is the explanation why the DEP is finding the 3 tributaries that are out there that aren't on the quad sheet. Just because it's a tributary defined by 314 CMR 22 doesn't mean it's going to show up on a quad sheet. In fact, most of them don't.
Hey, Greg, can I interrupt you for a second? With all this, we haven't heard from from Attorney Galvin at all. I see he's there. I know he's muted. Mr. Attorney Galvin, any chance you can ring in on this?
I think you're spending a lot of time chewing the fat on issues that are not necessarily up to you. And I really think that at the very beginning, Attorney Nagel was talking about having this matter resolved at DEP. Look, they don't have a project if they don't resolve the Zone A issue in their favor. I think we can hem and haw about whether this is jurisdictional with the commission or the hydrogeologist, I can't even say the other word, should be testifying in front of your board. You're not in any better position to judge that matter. Only DEP is going to determine this issue. I don't think it would be helpful to you, because at best, you're going to tell them that they can't build a project unless they comply with the state regulation and the state law. Okay, so they should go out and get that answer first, and then come back to us with whatever project they have or don't have once that issue is finally determined. And, there are a lot of project changes. Some maybe someone perceives for the better. Some abutters might think do nothing to help them. But we have a threshold question here that I really think that needs to be resolved. And I think we should give the applicant some time to resolve those issues. I think they've got not only the DEP Zone A issue, but they have to resolve the water and the well issue, to know whether they have enough water supply in the ground that doesn't affect or a drawdown on either of the reservoirs or cause damage to the wetlands that surround the upland area of this property. So they have to resolve that. They won't know that to June 1st. And then, thirdly, we have a a sewage issue or a wastewater issue because of the moratorium with DEP. Now, it is true that there was a letter and discussions between a former sewer commission that exists today before there was a moratorium, under which there was an understanding that a certain sum of money could be paid in order to connect, thereby reducing the amount of water that was going to infiltrate into the system sufficiently to allow this project to connect. But since that time, we've had a moratorium, and we have had cases involving moratoriums in Rockland in the past. And I know Mary Parsons is going to point one of them out for us. And she's right. Someone challenged a moratorium years ago. And after a lot of money was spent, they lost, and the moratorium was upheld. So, I really think that we ought to allow some of these threshold issues to be resolved. If people want to weigh in on it, it's great. But I mean, there's so much that's out of your hands right now. It doesn't make sense to go a lot further until they get these issues resolved. And that's my opinion. I don't want to see them spend a lot more money. I do think it would be helpful, and we could probably knock out the LSP stuff in the meantime. But, beyond that, we need to let them finish their preliminary work, and perhaps we'll get a determination from DEP that says, yes, this project is going to be able to go forward and comply with state standards because it's not in a Zone A, and perhaps we'll get an opinion that says it's in Zone A and there'll be no project. So I really think those things ought to happen, and we ought to give them the time to do that. That's my 2 cents.
Thank you for putting in your 2 cents. It's definitely worth at least 4 cents. So I guess my question is, at this point, then, do we have Pat Brennan? Do we request Pat Brennan to look at and comment on all these plans when we know they have the potential of changing anyway? Is that something that, what do you think?
I think you should ask the applicant if they want to do that. I mean, if the plans are going to change or are subject to change, I don't want to waste their money in having Mr. Brennan look at them and comment on them and then have them change them again. Maybe we ought to ask them what they want to do.
Mr. Lincoln, coming back to you, sir.
I kind of agree with Attorney Galvin. So I would just, hold it in abeyance and.
All right.
Yep. I mean, I don't mind going forward with the LSP thing because honestly, we don't, we're comfortable with that.
Right.
If you agree, if you don't, we can just hold that off as well. So up to you guys.
Again, the review with Pat Brennan, if we know things have the potential of changing again anyway, it's just wasting your money. I don't see it necessary. It's wasting his time. The LSP, that end of it, it's reviewing 2 documents that are already there. All right.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the necessity of it at this point, just to make certain that we're looking at documents that we can trust, and we get an outside source that looks at them and says either yes, you can trust them, or no, you can't trust them. And with their express opinions as to what they think needs to happen. That's basically what we're looking at. And I guess we're going to go with the RU. So again, we said that already. If you can get that check for the 1,500 to Deb, we can get that underway. Make sure that gets taken care of. At this point, I'm thinking we're looking at a continuance. Another 30. Do we want to do 30 days? Do we want to do 60
Mr. Chairman,
days? Mr. Baker.
I'd like to make a motion to continue the public hearing on Shinglemill till July 5th, our last remote meeting. at
July 5th,
6:30.
is that a Tuesday? Is that a Tuesday?
That is a Tuesday.
Really? I would have no problem with that.
Can I make a suggestion? Why don't we ask the applicant how long they think they need to resolve
They
this?
wouldn't answer us.
I bet they would
I
if
asked that
we,
question an hour ago.
I bet they would give it a better estimate because they're the ones that are gonna be dealing with this issue. And I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, Attorney Marioni or Attorney Nagel. I think it would be important for you to tell us what you think is realistic.
What I'd like to do, I appreciate the July 5th date. What I'd like to do is do something in the middle that would allow the LSP work to be accomplished between now and then. Come back to a meeting with everybody, just for environmental, nothing else, unless you want to add something else. But that would be my idea. And then give us between now and then to meet with Concom once or twice, and really get a feel for where we are with that process so that we can answer the question that the board asked. And I don't think Attorney Nagel was trying to be intentionally evasive. I don't think we know today, but I think we meet with Concom next week. We'll probably meet with them again so that when we come back to the meeting, in 4 weeks or 5 weeks or 6 weeks, whatever it is that you determine is reasonable to get the environmental done, we can give you a real game plan at that point.
Mr. Chairman, I rescind that motion and change it to continue till May 17th for Shingle Mills at 6:30.
That's great. I appreciate that, Mr. Baker.
No problem.
Mr. Lincoln, Mr. Nagel, Mr. Dimitrick, does that work for you guys?
Yes, sir.
Yes? Okay, as long as it works for everybody, I don't see that being a problem.
Nothing else on the agenda.
Let's see, today's the first.
Then we'll stay limited to that one issue.
Yeah, I think we can cover that.
Great,
just see
thank
where
you.
we are here. It's the first. Give me that date one more time.
May 17th,
17th. Okay.
30.
All right. All right. So that's a decent. That should give the LSP enough time. That's what we'll deal with. And again, it is what it is. We don't have to limit it to that one thing. If anything else comes up, then we can we can talk about that. But primarily, that's what we're looking for. But I have one final question on this before we make a motion. We have one final question, which I really don't have I haven't gotten the answer to yet. If the Conservation Commission does not have jurisdiction within, if they do not have the jurisdiction within the zone A to say what can and can't happen, what local board does? Would planning board have that? Would they have that say? Attorney Galvin, is there an answer that I can get on this one?
Yes, I mean, if we had a local water supply ordinance, that would be applicable, but we don't.
Okay.
Okay, there are cities and towns with local water supply ordinances. Rockland is not one of them.
Okay. So if there was a local water supply ordinance, then the Water Commission would be responsible for governing what does and
So the
does not
joint
happen.
Abington Rockland Waterworks, okay, has some rules and regulations that are in force and effect, but there's no like water supply bylaw in Rockland, and that's what I'm talking about.
No, I understand that. I look at it from a wouldn't the planning board? I don't see why the planning board wouldn't have some sort of purview here.
Well, because the planning board is principally concerned with the subdivision control law and some zoning delegation of authority that it's received for certain types of development. But subdivision, as we know, is not what this is. And it is principally concerned with the adequacy of width, grade, and construction of roads. And, infrastructure in subdivisions. So that's its principal responsibility, plus anything that's delegated to them under the zoning bylaw. And none of this project isn't submitted under either of those laws. And even if it was, it would still be up to you.
Just trying to figure out who locally has the applicant has asserted that they do not believe that the Conservation Commission has this within their purview.
Just so you know, local Conservation Commission acts as the local approving authority under state law. So
Right.
I think what you probably missed was that they've submitted locally so they can get to DEP. And I think that's what they're up to,
Okay.
if I was guessing.
All right. It's one of those situations where nobody wants to really show their cards. I like it. Okay. All right. So I have a motion on the table. We said that was May 17th, you said?
Hold on, Deborah is trying to get your attention.
But Deb, what's going on?
So we can continue till May 17th for environmental, but we need to extend the date to close the hearing. Right now, it stands at March 31st.
I'll get your letters in the morning.
Attorney Marioni, I appreciate that, sir.
Yep.
Just
no problem.
a couple of weeks after that date
No
would be
problem.
appropriate,
Yep.
and we'll deal with it, any further extensions at that time.
Yep.
Thanks, Deb. Appreciate that. Rob, want to do your motion one more time, just so we have it?
I'll make a motion to continue Shinglemill till May 17th at 6:30. Nothing else on the agenda.
Got a motion, need a second?
Can,
I got a second from Mr. Haynes. Roll call, myself is a yes. Mr. Baker Senior,
Yes.
Mr. Haynes,
yes,
Mr. Tanzi.
Yes.
All right, so we're continued to then. We've already talked to, and again, Attorney Marioni came in and he's gonna give us the extension date, so that works. Mr. Lincoln, you're gonna get together with Deb at some point, hopefully before the end of the week, and just get her a check for the LSP.
Yes.
Once that happens, Deb, you'll be able to contact the LSP. All right, so that takes care of that. The
Well,
only thing is,
do we need to make a motion to extend the cutoff date?
No, we don't, because they're writing us a letter.
All right.
so other than that, what else do we need to discuss tonight? I don't think that's it. I think that's it when it comes to Shinglemill at this point. We're all good?
Yeah, no sense to talk about anything else, really.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so everybody has their marching orders?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you, everybody. Let me just go through, I want to go through our zoning here one more time, just to make sure we've got nothing else we're going to talk about.
we haven't gotten minutes in a little bit. Are we, what's our minute situation?
Deb,
I haven't gotten anything for minutes, and I haven't drafted any yet. I'll be working on it this weekend.
all right,
From
so
February.
everything that Deb has picked up, she's got in rough, she and I talked earlier. They're in rough draft form, from taking them at the meetings. She's putting them together this weekend to get to us for review before we adopt them, or accept them rather.
Gotcha. So Deb's, you're doing minutes now, not Kim?
Oh, wait a second. Have we even talked about this?
No.
I thought we all talked about this. Why did I think this went through in a text
Rob,
message?
this needs to be noted on a future addenda as an action item or a discussion item.
Oh, I thought this would be a non-deliberative announcements and scheduling.
No, it's not. This should be added to your next agenda for an update on meeting minutes so that we're discussing appropriate business in an appropriate meeting.
Okay, we'll deal with that, and we'll deal with that at that point. Any other questions, Mr. Haynes?
Swimming into shark infested waters. Should we just have a motion to adjourn then?
Second.
Oh, I got a motion.
Gonna let the public comment.
What was that? I heard nothing but feedback.
Are you gonna let the public comment?
I hear nothing but. Mary, I hear
Mary
nothing but
Mary
feedback.
Parsons is asking if they're gonna have public comment tonight.
At this point, no. Because there's nothing that we can do at this point. There's absolutely nothing anyone can do
But-
until we get.
I do think it's important to note that, like, Mary Parsons submitted a letter, which will be available to anybody that wants it, and, you know, you'll make some time at the next meeting for the public to speak.
I then, as stated by Attorney
I
Galvin,
could actually give you information.
at this point, the hearing's closed on it at this point, for tonight. We've already decided we're already continuing it. I don't think we need to talk about it. Not right now. There's no reason to, because there's nothing we can do until this Zone A gets solved. And we don't make this determination. Nobody in this town makes this determination. It's only something that the state can come out and say. No matter what anybody brings to us that says that there is or there isn't, until the state says this is what it is, there's nothing anybody can do. There's nothing on the zoning board can do.
But the state did say it's a zone A.
I understand that. I've got
Rob,
Mr. Galley.
Dana's iPad is signed on twice. She's probably giving herself feedback. And also Dana's iPad does not have her name as you require.
Thank you,
That's
Mr.
because I
Galley.
couldn't put a name to it.
I did. Mary, we're not gonna go any further in this. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm calling the meeting. I've got a motion. I've got a second. All right, so did we roll call this already? I mean, I'm flustered.
Roll
All
call.
right. I got a motion. I got a second. Myself is yes. Mr. Baker Senior.
Yes.
Got Mr. Haynes,
Yeah.
Mr. Tanzi.
Yes.
Done.
Put it on this. This is better.
See you next week.
Yeah, see you next week. I'm ending the meeting. We'll talk.